Y'all don't be scared and don't be shy. This is not The Walking Dead. There's no brain eating going on. Come on down. How's everybody doing tonight?
Super.
Good. Oh, come on. We're the dead ones. How y'all doing tonight? Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I'm so glad to see you guys at the home of my bones here. We don't get a whole lot of visitors going on. My manners escape me. Forgive myself. My name is William McCollum. Later in life, I would be called Reverend William McCollum. And while this is the resting place of the bones, I am not originally from here. I am from just up the road in what was called the Wildcat District, Cherokee County. You folks might know that is just a little north of Woodstock, or some of you just a little north of Reformation, depending on where you fall on that thing. I was born on a very cold, dark, windy November day, 1867. Do not really know about the weather patterns that day, but it makes for a good telling of the tape. I was raised on my grandmama's farm up there, raised by my mama, single mom. Tad scandalous at those days. A little later in my career, it would be said in the story told in my family that I presided over the funeral service of a gentleman who was probably my father I never knew. Jerry Springer got nothing out of it. Growing up there, I had the opportunity to go to church with a beautiful young lady. Her name was Mary Chastain. Everybody knew her as Molly. Now, for those of you that ride them horseless buggies around here, you might recognize the name McCollum and Chastain. And I'm quite sure there's a lot of you that know those names on those thoroughfares over there. They use the Lord's name in vain just a little too much. Y'all need to stop that. Molly and I decided about 1890 or so, we needed to leave the country and move to the big city to make our fame and fortune. Just a few short years before that, Kennesaw was incorporated and chartered, and we decided to move down to Kennesaw to raise our burgeoning and growing family. Now, like most young men of the day, my original job was the work-at-home guy. I was a farmer. Didn't really cut it. So like many young men of the day, I found gainful employment with the railroads. If you were from Acworth, Kennesaw, and Marietta, you were probably working for the railroad at some point in time. And my job was as what we call a brakeman. And what that meant was myself and some other fine fellas would get up on top of the roof of a moving railroad car, turn a big old wheel, and apply the brakes to that car. The other part of that job was in charge of the coupling and uncoupling of those railroad cars. Now, that was somewhat of a dangerous profession. There was a lot of young men that fell off of the roofs of them cars, and also a lot of young men called left it. You got to be careful with that. As we developed ourselves here in Kennesaw, I knew that service to the community was important. And in 1898, I served on the Kennesaw City Council. There was a fellow that ran for city council. He won and thought better of it and decided not to serve. And I filled that term. City council's a tad contentious. Some things never change. After serving in politics, I decided I needed to get back closer to God. And in 1901, I became an ordained Baptist minister. Now, back in those days, there were a lot of community churches around people would walk to, take their horse and buggy to, but there were not a lot of ministers around, so I became a circuit preacher. And what that meant was I would serve 4 or 5 churches at a time, and I would go once a week and preach, serve that flock, and I served in Cobb, Cherokee, Bartow, and Fulton counties. I got to know a lot of people. Now, making that circuit and starting out was a little bit tough because it was the original definition of horsepower. It had 4 legs and a tail, and that's how I got around. But the times were changing. And about 1910 or so, I became a first adapter. I was one of the first people here in Cobb County to own one of those horseless buggies. So I got around a lot faster, and a lot of people got to know me real, real well. I did that for 20 years. It was a great life. In March of 1921, the good Lord called me home. The Cherokee newspapers published and said, "Death's angel has come and taken my good and faithful servant home. He has done what he needed to do." The local newspapers also published and said, "At my services were 11 ministers and nearly 1,000 people." That's a great testament, I think, to the life I served here in this community. And here I shall remain until that beautiful resurrection morn when I go home. And I appreciate y'all stopping by to visit. Please don't be strangers. And I hope you enjoy meeting the rest of my friends tonight. Y'all have a great night.
Did I ever question? With the name Chastain. So was it because she was your wife and therefore they used the name, or was that a big prominent name?
Chastain family, as my understanding, was very prominent throughout the times over there. So whereas the McCollum family, I did not take the name of my daddy because we didn't know who he was.
Okay.
But the Chastains were prominent. She became actually Mary McCollum, but the Chastains were a prominent family around here and have been for a long, long time.
Thank you.
Smell.